it's really good for the global south, for the Middle East, for the resistance axis to see things like this, okay? Last year, Iran signed a 25-year partnership with China, basically integrating Iran into the Belt and Road Initiative, or the New Silk Road, as it's also known. And by the way, Cuba and Syria also followed suit. That's very good. It's very good because you have all these countries kind of, breaking away from the maximum pressure campaign, which was launched by Trump and Pompeo, and is really still in place under Biden, where they have put all these sanctions on all the, quote unquote, evil countries, right? They just basically make people starve in Venezuela. They make people starve in Syria, make people, suffer in Iran. They can't find certain medicines. There's so many aspects of sanctions that ruin people's lives. And it's always civilians that are being hurt the most, that are being affected the most by sanctions. They tell you, oh, it's sanctions on Maduro. No, it's sanctions on Venezuelans. Get that straight. And always remember, sanctions are economic warfare. So, really what's happened, instead of these countries collapsing under maximum pressure, they've circumvented the sanctions. And again, I don't say that lightly. It doesn't mean they didn't suffer. They did. But nevertheless, the long-term objective of the Americans to break these countries has not worked. Like I said, the sanctions really destroy everything. And when you cannot function properly, all the sectors collapse: agriculture, industry, and services. So it's a big challenge to recover from that. Iran, one of its biggest exports and sources of revenue is oil. After the sanctions, they had to decrease their oil output by half. They have 100 million barrels in storage. So that means less money to use on social projects, on infrastructure, and so on. So you have countries like China that have come in, countries like Venezuela that have come in and said, you know what, screw the sanctions. We want to work together. We want to buy your oil, and we'll give you this in exchange. And they've used those resources wisely to improve the country. Iran, for example, is fourth in the world in nanotechnology. Iran's defense capabilities are quite extraordinary. They have cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, to the point that Israel is afraid of them, to the point that Trump left the nuclear deal, with the Israelis telling him to, of course, because the nuclear deal didn't cap Iran's ballistic missile program, which you might be wondering, well, why? They don't have, those two things are different. Yeah, they are. No one's saying these countries are perfect. They're far from perfect, but you can't say that they've done nothing and that they haven't found ingenious ways to work with the sanctions despite the suffering. You can't ignore that, because it's an insult to the work of many, many people. Syria, unfortunately, is not only under sanctions, but at war, right? So it's been crippled in both those ways. But these countries are sticking together now. You're seeing more and more cooperation between them. So, they screw these countries, and then when they try helping each other, Iran and Venezuela helping each other, they still trample on them. The shift to a multipolar world that we've been talking about, right? So many things are going on right now, so many things. And we talked about all these oil sales, energy sales, gas sales, in being denominated in currencies other than the US dollar. We talked about all these countries that refuse to sanction Russia, that have actually preferred to just continue trading, continue their ties, their bilateral ties with Russia. So once again, you have to understand that the world is not just the West. There's literally an entire world outside, okay? When they talk about the international community, let's really talk about the international community, not just Western countries. And you will see that a lot of things are changing right now. A lot of things are speeding up. China's Belt and Road, this is going in parallel. The Greater Eurasia Project, all of this, it's tiny, tiny pieces adding up to shift away. And no one can know for sure what that world is going to be like, this multipolar world. I don't know if it's going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be worse. This world, though, this system that we have, this political system, NATO brutality, half the Middle East on fire, the sanctions, this cannot go on. This cannot go on. We can't tolerate this.